Recognizes the gentleman from California, Mr. DeSaulnier, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to thank you for your testimony and your service. It's been a long day, and I admire your resume. I came from a similar background. I went to a Catholic high school and a Catholic college. I remember going to Holy Cross and having people say, the graduates from Harvard and Yale make the laws, but the graduates from Holy Cross and Fordham enforce the laws. And we always took great pride in that because I think you as well, and I, having had friends who had served in the Bureau, took great pride in that that education reinforced your ethical beliefs in a difficult world where we all make mistakes, and that's part of our humanity. So I admire your work. I must say I'm discouraged today to have listened to much of this hearing. On many levels, I'm discouraged because I consider many of the people on the other side of the aisle as friends, good friends. I must say this reminds me of what it must have been like to sit through the McCarthy hearings. I'm waiting for that moment at long last. Do you have no shame? But maybe that's to come. Having said that, I am troubled by the fact that someone in your background did what you did. But you and I both believe in redemption, so I think you have acted in that way today. I wanted to ask you a couple, just a comment and a question specifically for one case. So there's been a persistent conspiracy theory about Hillary Clinton email investigation and one of your former colleagues, John Jackalone, the executive assistant director for the FBI's National Security Branch. He left the FBI because he was upset that there was a bias in the Clinton case, so the conspiracy theorists say, and going, quote, sideways, or, quote, nowhere by design. So he responded in testimony in front of our committee on June 21st and said that these allegations were completely false, quote, unquote, nonsense. Quote, he said, totally inaccurate. This is all nonsense. Almost the whole thing is nonsense. I'd have to read it again to definitively say that, but from what I recall, I didn't leave because I was disgruntled. I left because I was broke. He continues, I loved every minute I spent in the FBI. I had one bad day in 25 years, and that was on 9/11. And I think it was a bad day for a lot of people and for this country. So there's no way I left because I was sideways or because I was disgruntled. I was purely the right time for me, 25 years in, right opportunity. I never spoke to anybody that wrote the internet article. I don't know who they used it, the source to this thing. He further said, explaining the Clinton case from the outset, he said, quote, I fully recognized right at the gate that it was a political bombshell, that we, meaning the FBI, were an apolitical organization, right? So I had the referral, we were going to open up the case, and we were going to wait to put together a team, and we were going to conduct a thorough down-the-middle investigation, which is what we did, end quotes. And then starting again in quotes, he said about Director Comey, he's a straight-ahead guy, right, I mean, and you know, if the evidence existed, he would have pushed it for prosecution. And then about you, he said, quote, there was no indication that he exhibited any bias while he was conducting the investigation while he was working for me. He went 110 miles an hour, and we were always looking for new ways to uncover information and evidence. So I had no indication that he would politically lean the way I guess some of these text messages show that he leaned. At no point in time during my management of this case did he exhibit anything that would provide any slight indication of some of those things that were, you know, posted and put out to the media, end quotes. Do you have any comments on your former colleague's comments?
Sir,
or what he's had to go through?
I deeply appreciate them. Mr. Jackalone is an extraordinary agent with a heart of gold, and I appreciate them.
So just in closing, I'm just curious, and not to be redundant, but I really want to sort of reiterate, you were nonpartisan in your comments and criticisms, which I think is fair. My dad used to be a state superior court judge in Massachusetts, and I remember one of my siblings once, active in politics, put a bumper sticker in his car, and he went ballistic. There was no question that he was a very committed Republican, but he was concerned about the perception. So sitting here today after all these hours, is there any one thing that you could encapsulate what the Bureau could learn from this experience to make sure no one would sit where you're sitting again?
Sir, there is. My belief is that these texts would never be public. and whether reasonable or not, they were made public. And I deeply regret certainly the appearance that they created and all the way that manifested itself out personally with regard to the Bureau. So at the end of the day, we're judged on our actions. Certainly, you know, what I do with regard to my personal matters is my own business. But I would also say I take some comfort that when I look at my actions in the workplace, that they are proper, that they are correct, that they were done for the right reasons and done in the right way. And so whenever I get ups and downs in this experience, I look at that record of work, and it gives me considerable comfort that it was done right and well. So,
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield back.
The chair recognizes the gentleman from